So, a couple of months ago, my wife Katie suddenly filed for divorce after 5 years of marriage. We've known each other for several years as friends. We dated for 3 years before we got married, and it came as a huge shock to me because we had been doing fairly well, like any other couple. We had our ups and downs, but I never thought that it was a cause for concern. At certain times, I did feel like we had lost the spark, and I tried my best to keep the romance alive. But I guess that was not enough. One day, a couple of weeks before our fifth marriage anniversary together, she just left. I tried to call her, text her, and get through to her in any way whatsoever, but she had blocked me everywhere. A few days later, I received divorce papers and an email saying that she was just done with me and she was done with our marriage as well. She said that she felt like she was wasting her life. She didn't even feel like she loved me anymore, and it had been a gradual process. But she had just lost feelings for me, and it has been difficult to stick it out, even until now. But she doesn't want to do this anymore. She still has a good chunk of her life left, and she wants to do things her way now. I tried to write back so I could convince her to at least give us another chance, and maybe we could fix this with counseling or something. But she didn't reply to any of that. So after holding out for a few weeks, I decided to give her what she wanted and agreed to the divorce. The terms of the petition were quite fair, and she didn't want anything from me. She just wanted to end the marriage. So it was a relatively straightforward process. And after the waiting period elapsed, we were done. The whole thing took about 3 months, but those 3 months really took a toll on me because it was not just Katie. My parents also made it very difficult for me by siding with her during this whole thing. For context, we don't have a good relationship and are just generally difficult people. So I'm mostly just civil to them, and our relationship is superficial at best. I didn't want to tell them about the divorce because I knew they would freak out since they were really close with Katie, or at least they loved her, and I guess she liked them, but she was not crazy about them like they were about her. Anyway, because of that, I didn't want to tell him about any of this until I absolutely had to. But then, within a few days of her leaving, I had to tell them the truth. They called me up one day to talk about some wedding that we were all invited to, and like every time since they had called, they wanted me to put Katie on the phone as well. I tried to make up some excuse, but then they just kept asking about Katie. And I was already very stressed out at the time, so I snapped at them. I told them the truth about what I was going through, and then I hung up because I didn't want to hear them whine and rant about the situation. And luckily, they did not. But they ended up flying down here the next day and visited Katie instead. They told me about it the next evening, saying that they were pretty sure that this was all my fault and they had flown down here to confirm it. And they had visited Katie while she was staying with her parents and spoken to her. After having done that, they realized that whatever they had thought was true, it was actually my fault. Because apparently, Katie was leaving me because her life with me was just plain boring. We didn't have any spark, and she thought that she didn't have any chemistry with me, and she wanted to go out and explore. I personally do not think that any of those were my shortcomings, but my parents thought so. They blamed me for the divorce, and when I ignored them, they tried to call me, but I didn't pay any attention to them. A couple of weeks later, they told me that they were transferring one of their real estate properties to her. So my parents are reasonably well off. And since I am their youngest and at least the favorite child, I knew that they had some money and an apartment in New York City set aside for me as my inheritance. But now they were transferring that property to her because they believed that she was the daughter they never had, and I was just a disappointment to them. I guess they thought that I was going to fight for it, but I never really cared about any of that. I didn't respond to my parents, and the apartment went to her. And that was like 5 months ago. And after the divorce was finalized, I didn't hear from Katie. Neither have I heard from my parents for the past couple of months, but they texted me a couple of days ago saying that they need my help and need me to put them in touch with Katie. Out of curiosity, I replied to them because I wanted to know what was going on and what had made them desperate enough to contact me. So I found out that they actually needed my help to get in touch with her because apparently she had blocked them everywhere, and she had even told them not to contact her anymore because she had started seeing another guy and they'd been together for 2 months now. He finds it creepy that her ex-in-laws are still so obsessed with her, and so she has chosen to cut them out of her life. Now they want my help to either get back in touch with her or somehow talk her into returning the New York apartment to them. When I heard what was happening to them and what they needed my help for, I laughed and told them that they deserved exactly this. And I'm not going to help them out with anything. Then I hung up and blocked them. But since then, I've been having second thoughts about it. So AITA for refusing to help my parents get in touch with my ex-wife. Update 1. Thank you so much to everyone who commented. The reason I was having second thoughts about my decision not to help my parents was because I had spoken to my sister about it and she didn't think that it was the right thing to do. My parents have 3 kids. Like I said, I'm the youngest. My sister is the oldest, and she's the only person that I actually somewhat get along with in the family. My brother, the middle child, is too attached to our parents to care about me, but my sister has been fighting for me since I was a child, and even recently, when this whole thing happened, she had taken my side and tried to speak some sense into my parents. I appreciated it, and I still do. But when I told her about my conversation with my parents and how I had refused to help them, she told me that was not a good move. She believed that now that everything was done and they had learned their lesson, that was punishment enough. And I did not need to go out of my way to make it worse. All I had to do was just help them get in touch with Katie. And it would probably not even be that difficult for me. But I didn't agree with her. I thought that she was being a little too neutral in this situation because after all, when my parents called me, it was not like they apologized for anything. They just told me that they needed me to help them out and told me what I needed to do to help. There was no apology, so I don't think that I have to forgive them and do anything according to them. Now, this is where my sister and I disagree, and we got into a bit of an argument over this, and she told me that unless I speak to my parents, have a proper discussion with them about all this, and try to sort things out, she'll not be talking to me either. Now, I don't know what to feel about any of that. Neither do I intend on doing any of it. I am a bit disappointed with my sister right now, frankly, because I really thought that she would understand where I'm coming from. But obviously that is not the case, and I have accepted the fact that right now nobody from my family wants to talk to me. So far, the only person that I had kept in touch with was my sister, but now I guess even that's done with, because I'm not going to apologize to my parents, and neither am I going to reach out to them. And I know that that's exactly what they expect me to do, so they can forget about it. So if my sister doesn't want to talk to me just because I refuse to be a doormat for my parents, then I don't know what to say to her. Also, I refuse to pretend that my parents are victims of anything at all. That's what my sister believes, that they have been punished for what they did, and I guess she feels bad for them and considers them the victim in this situation. But I don't feel the same way at all. Ultimately, nobody really forced them to transfer the property to Katie. They did that of their own accord. They just wanted to get back at me because we were getting divorced, and for some reason, they wanted me to make it feel like it was my fault. And I still remember how they implied that she was like their own daughter and stuff, so I really don't see a reason to feel bad for them. Had it been a case of Katie manipulating them, I might have even considered feeling a little sympathetic, but here, that's obviously not what happened. And it's shocking that my sister can't see that. I really don't know what to say to her anymore. So far, she's always been able to see through our parents' BS. But I don't know what happened to her this time. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I have made my choice. My sister has made hers. And so have my parents. And now we're just going to have to live with whatever choices we have made. There is no other way to deal with the situation at the moment. The past few months have already been difficult enough for me. I don't want to make it even worse by interacting with my parents or Katie more. From now on, if anybody from my family tries to contact me, I'm just going to ignore them. And if they try to get in the way of how I choose to lead my life now, I'm just going to block them. Because I'm done dealing with people telling me what to do and making me feel guilty when I don't do that. And just generally messing with my emotions. It's not fair to me. But I don't really think that any of these people care about that. So I'm done caring too. I really can't do this anymore and keep putting my own mental health at stake. But anyway, enough about me. Once again, just thank you to everyone who bothered to comment on my post and had good advice for me. Update 2. Hi, so it's been 8 days since I last spoke to my parents and found out what's been going on with them and Katie. And then I had a whole fight with my sister and stuff, and things were quiet for a couple of days. I thought that they were finally going to leave me alone, but I was wrong, because today, right after I came back home from work, I started receiving phone calls from an unknown number. I picked up the first time, and when I heard my parents on the other line, I decided to block them immediately. Because I really did not have time for this nonsense. I was already pretty exhausted after work. And I just wanted to wind down for a bit, but that was not acceptable to them. So then they started calling me from my brother's phone, and I had to block him as well because I was determined not to let them get to me. For a while, it worked. I was able to relax for a bit without being disturbed by them anymore. But then, just an hour ago, I decided to check my email like I do every night. And they sent me an email, and it was basically just their attempt to guilt trip me into helping them, saying that if I did not put them in touch with Katie, then they would have to fly down themselves and deal with this personally, and they really did not want to do that. Things might get ugly, and they had really loved Katie, but now they felt betrayed. And as somebody who knows exactly how that feels, I should be helping them out and not turning my back on my family. I legitimately had to roll my eyes at that part because I really don't understand how they were comparing my divorce with what happened to them. Katie was my wife and the love of my life for so many years. I trusted her because I knew her well. And yes, they should have trusted Katie too. But for as long as she was married to me, the second she said that she wanted to go out and explore after 5 years of marriage and all the years that we had known each other apart from that, all the trust flew out the window. And that's what should have happened with my parents as well. I'm not saying they shouldn't have liked their daughter-in-law right off the bat, but choosing their daughter-in-law over their own son, that's a bit much, especially when they're going through a divorce. I can't even imagine what kind of parents would choose to do something like that. And then knew the real reason for the divorce as well. It's not like they were unaware of it, so I don't understand how they expected anything good to come out of this. With me and Katie, it had been a betrayal of my trust for sure, because she never spoke to me about any of this and never even gave me an opportunity to try and fix things. But with my parents and Katie, it was just my parents being idiots and making a huge mistake, which now they have to face the consequences for. It's as simple as that. There is just no scope for comparison with my situation. And as for turning my back on family, I'm pretty sure that I am not the one who did that first. I'm just reciprocating, so they have no right to complain at the moment. Anyway, that was the first half of the email. The second half said that if I help them out, they would reinstate the New York apartment back to me. So they were literally trying to bribe me into helping them out. And I really don't understand why they thought that it was going to be a good look for them. Not everything is transactional, and I'm definitely not going to sell out over one apartment. It's a pretty expensive apartment, and if I were to sell it, it would definitely fetch a good amount of money. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to grovel in front of Katie so she can speak to my parents and transfer the apartment back to them. That is beneath my dignity, and I don't want to have anything to do with that woman anymore. I mentioned this in my first post itself. I'm doing reasonably well for myself, and I don't want to get greedy. It might be a practical thing to do, but if it involves interacting with Katie or my parents, then I'm just not interested. Anyway, towards the end of the email, they were just trying to reason with me, saying that they knew that what they had done with me was not right, and Katie was definitely the bad guy here. They had learned their lesson, but now it was too little too late. I really didn't care if they had learned their lesson or not. I couldn't care less if they got the apartment back or not, and I was just done with all of them. I'm not going to do their dirty work for them, and I want to keep all of them as far as I can from myself. The only thing that I have any regrets about is the fact that I'm not going to be able to speak to my sister for a long time now unless she apologizes. She and I were actually pretty close, and I do miss her. She stood by my side throughout the divorce against our parents. Granted, she never cut them off either, but she was at least there for me, and she fought for me, and that's all that mattered. I know it might be pointless, but I'm still hoping that she comes to her senses and reaches out to me, because I really would hate it for us to lose the relationship that we had because of this whole mess that our parents have created. Update 3. Hi, so it's been 4 days since my last update, and surprisingly, Katie reached out to me today. She contacted me from a new number, and when I picked up, she immediately started yelling at me and told me that my parents were crazy and that they had no right to do the stuff that they were doing. I had to ask her to slow down because I had no idea what she was even referring to, and then she explained what had happened earlier today. Apparently, my parents had done what they had said they would do and flown in to speak to Katie directly. Since I had made it very clear that I was not willing to help them out, they had to get involved themselves. After the divorce, Katie stayed with her parents for a couple of weeks, but then she got a separate apartment for herself. Coincidentally, my parents had helped her find that one, and she was still staying there, so my parents knew where to find her. When they got to her, she refused to let them in and told them that if they bothered her, she would call the cops. But my parents didn't care. They just kept banging on the door, and unfortunately her boyfriend happened to be at home at the time with her, and he was scared out of his wits because my parents were not only banging on the door, they were also yelling. They accused her of being a gold digger, betraying their son and their trust, and manipulating them into giving her the apartment. And of course, all this was overheard by her boyfriend, who had no idea about the apartment and is now asking a bunch of questions about it. I don't know what exactly she expected me to do about it, but I found the whole thing very funny. They did not even flinch at the mention of the cops when Katie tried to threaten them from inside the apartment. They just kept demanding that either she open the door and treat them respectfully and return the apartment to them, or they would make sure that she faces the consequences of whatever she has done. They went away after a while when she said that she was going to talk to them later, but right now her boyfriend was at home, so she couldn't talk to them. So they're going to return again in the evening, and she's going to have to talk to them. And she wants me to get her out of it. She told me that I needed to speak to my parents and get them to back off, or else she was going to report them. I don't know what exactly she expected me to say, but I just told her that she was free to do whatever she wanted. I really didn't care about any of this crap. She was about to argue with me, but I just hung up and I blocked that number. I cannot even imagine having that kind of audacity after everything that she has put me through. It was really crazy for her to call me and expect me to help, and I really have to hand it to my parents. They really outdid themselves this time. I never imagined that they would go to this extent, but I'm glad that they did because Katie deserves this. The only sad part is that I might not be able to find out what happens next because I've blocked all of them. So I can't imagine who is going to come and tell me what's happening. But that's all right. The fact that they are going to speak to each other this evening and it's inevitably going to end in a fight, that's good enough for me. They screwed me over. Now they can screw each other over. I really don't care about any of that. But I'm just glad that they're facing the consequences of their actions now. Update 4. So it's been 3 days since my last update, and in my last post I actually forgot to mention that I've been away on a business trip. I'm going back tomorrow, so I wasn't home at the time this whole thing took place, and I'm really happy that I wasn't home because I'm pretty sure that they would have taken that opportunity to try and visit me. At least that's what my sister told me. Yeah, so we are back on talking terms again because she apologized to me. She reached out to me yesterday in the evening and told me that she was really sorry about everything. She said that she really missed talking to me and that the past couple of days had been horrible because she just kept thinking that maybe she had said the wrong thing to me. And what I had done and the way that I was choosing to live my life was completely up to me. So if I didn't want to forgive my parents, I didn't have to. She had been feeling really guilty about all of that. So she wanted to apologize to me, and I accepted her apology as well. After all, there are very few people in my life that I actually value. My sister is one of them. So if she was really sorry about everything, then I was more than happy to welcome her back into my life. Anyway, we got to talk, and that's how I found out everything that happened after my phone call with Katie. That was another upside of mending my relationship with my sister. I got to find out everything that went down with my parents and Katie. And both of us had a good laugh about it because it's really ironic how this whole situation turned out to be. Apparently, after Katie called me up and I refused to help her out, she had to live up to her promise anyway. So my parents went over to her place in the evening, and by then, her boyfriend had had the good sense to leave. They confronted her. She yelled at them for almost having grown in her relationship and said that she was going to transfer the property back to them. But all that she needed from them was a promise that they were never going to bother her again. My parents agreed, but only on one condition, that she sign a document attesting to the same. They had already had their lawyer prepare some paperwork for them, and it said that within the month she was going to transfer the property back to them, and after that, they would have no contact with each other. All she had to do was sign it, and she did, and then they left. So everything is sorted out there, and once that was all done, they decided to try and visit me because they wanted to sort things out with me as well. But I was not at home, and they had no idea where I was, and neither could they find out since I had blocked them. They asked my sister, but since she was fighting with me, she had no idea either. So for the next 2 days, they kept trying to visit me, but I was not at home, and they returned disappointed. I'm actually glad that I did not have to face them because I'm really not in the right space of mind to interact with them at the moment. When I go back home later, I just want some peace and quiet, and I'm glad that I was able to escape whatever conversation my parents had planned. I'm also really happy that I was able to sort things out with my sister. She even said if I wanted, she could cut our parents off, but I told her that that's not what I wanted because that would be immature to ask for. And even though my parents had treated me badly in the recent past, that hadn't been the case for her. They had always been nice to her, and they had always treated her well, so it would be really weird for her to cut them off out of the blue. And I couldn't make her do that. I don't even want to. She was pretty relieved when I said that because that was definitely going to make everything a lot more awkward if she chose to do that. And I agreed with her. The only thing that mattered to me was that we were back on good terms again. I don't care that she kept in touch with our parents or whatever. That was all secondary to me, and I know it might have mattered to some people, but it really doesn't matter to me. Update 5. So it's been a month since my last update, and my sister and I are still on great terms. My parents were able to get their property back, so I guess they're finally happy now. But they haven't stopped trying to contact me. They keep making new accounts on social media, sending me emails from randomly generated addresses, and they've been pretty desperate. I spoke to my sister about it, and she told me that they really do feel sorry about everything that happened and they want to apologize to me. So a couple of days ago, I read one of the emails that they had sent me instead of just ignoring it like I usually do. And in that, they were apologizing to me and saying that they were wrong for everything that they have done. And even if I don't forgive them, they're going to be fine with it. But they want me to acknowledge that I've been at least receiving these emails and messages that they've been sending. So I decided to finally respond to them. I wrote back saying that I was receiving all these and that while I appreciated the fact that they had finally come to their senses now, I needed some time and space away from them. So bombarding me with apologies was not going to fix the situation. I really needed to process things on my own, and only after that would I be able to talk to them. But right now, that's not on the table, and I don't want them to keep apologizing. I just want some space. They replied to me last evening saying that they understood and said they were glad that at least I had chosen to respond to them this time. They said that I could have all the space and time that I needed because ultimately the mistake had been theirs and they had always treated me badly, so they deserved this. They decided that I could have all the time that I needed to think about what I wanted to do, and they would wait regardless of what my decision was going to be. So that's nice, I guess. And my sister said the same thing, that I can take whatever amount of time I want to, and they're just going to have to deal with it. So for now, I'm just taking my own sweet time. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.